This is Pacific Media from the Pacific Coast of Canada. We invited all the Vancouver candidates to the BC Legislature to speak about direct democracy. We present today the 4 who accepted our invitation. All candidates sincerely offered to change the political system. But to do that, they really want your endorsement of political power to them, so they can make all the political decisions for you and me. We, the citizens, have to ask ourselves, are we really incapable of legislating our own policies? If that is our belief, then we will continue to give our political power to legislate to political representatives. On the other hand, if we realize that we, the citizens, can legislate our own rules of governance, we will start building a direct democracy system. Here is what some political representatives or candidates think about direct democracy.
So this is Shane Simpson, MLA for Vancouver Hastings, and we are here together to discuss democracy. And we have talked about it before, but one more time, I'd like to ask Shane whether he thinks that the people, the electorate, are ready to make some decisions on their own. Do you think people are ready for it? Or some people think that people don't really know and it's better to just let you make all the decisions. What do you think?
You know, we've had this conversation before on a number of occasions, and I've discussed this matter with constituents. And generally the sense I get is that most of my constituents prefer a representative democracy. But what they're very clear about is they're looking for more accountability, they're looking for more transparency, they want legitimate engagement where they have an opportunity to engage in a conversation about issues.
How do they
But
engage?
At the end of the day, they're looking for me to do my job as their representative, and then they'll hold me accountable.
Yeah. How do they engage? You say people want to be engaged more in the decision making. I don't think you said decision making, but I'm just throwing that in. How do you engage people?
Well, I think you need to do it a number of ways. One is, I think, as a legislature, we have to do a better job in terms of things like legislative committees. You know, there's no opportunity for the public to talk to the legislature. They don't have that opportunity. It's different federally a little bit, and I think we could make it better provincially, where on substantive issues you can put those to committees and then invite people to be part of that conversation and part of the record on that. I also think that as an elected person, I have some responsibility to find techniques and ways to engage people who are my constituents.
Okay, what are those?
Well, I think there's a number. I think some of it's through organizations that are grassroots organizations, citizen-based groups, and
For
to make
instance,
sure.
what organizations?
For example, community associations, residents associations, those kind of groups that are in your community. I think you need to engage them. I think you need to have an opportunity where people feel welcome and are invited to talk to you. I think the use of social media increases the ability, I certainly have noticed that in the last few years, the ability for people to engage me, and I get much more interaction now, whether it's through Facebook, through Twitter, through email correspondence, those things. So I'm hearing more and more from people all the time. But you know, and just to finish a little bit on the issue, because what people say to me is that, look, we're interested in these issues, but we also have lives, and we have families, and we have jobs, and our ability to commit the kind of time or to have the resources and the access to the resources to get information is somewhat limited for people. And they say, you know, they pay me a pretty good salary to do that job, and they'll hold me accountable for it.
So what I hear you saying is that people still like the idea of you making the decisions for them, and that's why they elect you. That people have busy lives, they have to engage in their own daily living, their work, and their worries, and they perhaps don't have the time to make the political decisions that you as a paid political representative have. That's basically what I hear.
Well, I think yeah, I think there's some truth to that. And I think that people who are thoughtful about it also have concerns, and we've seen some of this in California with some of the referendum-based politics that we've seen in the past in California, where they worry about folks who have some money and have a political agenda and are able to advance populist causes that in fact have negative ramifications. And we saw that in California around some of the tax fightbacks where folks on the right in particular were advancing arguments for no more tax spending, no more tax increases, and created a situation that became pretty desperate for working people and for vulnerable people in California. But they had the ability and the resources to sell that message that was voted in referendums.
So you're saying that people can be persuaded to shoot in their own feet and their own foot, like make a decision that is actually detrimental for society, based on some propaganda, some group that lobby against, for instance, taxes. So you're saying people are not ready for direct democracy. Is that what you're saying?
Well, what I'm saying is that I think that we see a situation where there are people and organizations and institutions that would want to advance certain positions that were in their interest. And they have significant capacity to do that, whether it's to purchase advertising, other things. And then there were other groups that have much less ability because they simply don't access the resources. Their positions may be equally or even more compelling, but their ability to communicate, that's tough. So then you start saying, well, then do you want government to say, we are going to finance both sides, and you can't spend money over and above what we're going to give you? That's a possibility. You might want to do that. That might be the way you do it. And there would also be the argument, and we've had this discussion, I don't think that it's clear-cut, is there some threshold at which you say, these decisions are going to be decisions that are decided through some sort of direct democracy, through some form of referendum, and there are other decisions that will be made by elected people, and how do you judge, where does a decision fall in that as well?
So I was thinking when you said, well, there's this influence from lobbies with money, with economic ability to do that. But I'm thinking that is exactly what happens in elections. And you're not afraid of that. You make some rules, and I guess the amount of money that people can spend on their advertisement and all that, and maybe can put some rules on the amount of money that can be invested on propaganda if there is a referendum. The same controls could apply to that exist already for elections, could be applied for referendums. So you are not afraid of that.
No, and you know, and there's an argument to be made, for example, in the election that we're in currently. As a candidate, I can spend up to $70,000 on my election campaign, and that's the limit, and every candidate has the same limit. Now, I may have the ability to raise that money if I choose to spend that much. I don't, but I could, and I probably could raise the money if I had to. Yet there are other candidates, other parties, that might have very good ideas, but would never have the ability to raise that amount of money, just simply because they don't. And so they don't have the same ability to compete. Now, we set those limits, and we set them on parties, and we limit third-party advertising, and we don't let external forces influence the election period, the 28 days. So there are a fair amount of regulatory controls there. But it doesn't take away, at some point, you're going to allow people to engage and be able to send their message. I worry that the people who get to send the message too often are people who have resources, and those who don't have resources are at a real disadvantage, even though their argument may be the one that has the most merit.
So we have Ian Tuttle this afternoon with us, and he has agreed to come and discuss or talk, have a dialogue about democracy. And one of the questions that we want to ask him is, do you think that people, citizens, constituents are ready to make their own political decisions on all the relevant policies that are being discussed in the legislature?
You know, I would love to say yes, they are. However, the way that democracy works is that we elect representatives to go on our behalf to the legislature and make complex decisions that take longer than a few minutes. And what I've noticed, you know, I've had my eyes open. I'm a new candidate. I've not done this before. And I've spent quite a bit of time on the streets and knocking on doors over the last few weeks. And I've really had my eyes open that people don't give politics probably as much attention as it should get, given that the people that are elected to represent them end up you know, affecting, you know, their well-being, their health, their education, their tax policies, everything. So, you know,
I hear you saying that you don't think that people are ready for it.
no, I don't think they're ready for it. I think that the system that we have is a system of participatory democracy in such a way that we elect people on our behalf to go to a legislature and make complex decisions.
So the participation is on elections day, when we go to elections and we put the ballot box. That is how far the participation goes. After that, the representative gets to decide all the choices.
Yeah, no, that's not what I mean. I think that a representative, a good representative, should have his or her ears open and always be open for dialogue and direction from the constituents. We do have some faults with the system right now, and I think we could make a lot of improvements to the system that we have. For starters, you know, the two political parties that have really consisted or made up the oligopoly that is BC politics for the last 20 years have a whip system in place, which means that the MLAs have to vote along party lines. And if they don't, they're disciplined. And I think that that's a bit of an issue when you're dealing with democracy.
Okay, yeah, that is, the elected representatives don't have the freedom to vote their own way, but they have to follow the party line.
Right.
But I'm more concerned about the average Joe on the street, the average citizen that says, well, you didn't ask me to make that decision, or the majority of people don't want certain policies that the government still comes and says, you shall have HSD. And the majority of people are saying, oh, no, we don't want it. And it took a few years to fight it back, to say this is the will of the people. We are here with Sal Vetro. And Sal Vetro is a candidate for the BC First. So why BC First and not second or third?
BC First was born out of the Fight HST movement.
Okay.
BC First is a registered political party in British Columbia, but it's more of a movement than a political party. I decided to register as a political party because individuals can receive tax credits, tax receipts for donations to BC First. So it's much more of a movement towards, and that is our platform, direct democracy.
All right, that's music to my ears. Now, do you think that people in general, the citizens of, is it Falls Creek?
Vancouver Falls Creek.
Falls Creek, you think the citizens of Falls Creek are ready to practice this direct democracy? Because some people are afraid that people don't know what they're doing and people don't have the time to participate and all that. But you seem to think that people are ready for it.
I believe that people are ready for it. We shouldn't underestimate the power of the people. Their resolve with the HST proved overwhelmingly that if the people band together on a certain issue that they feel strongly about, forgetting about political affiliations of parties, it was people banding together against a tax that was not going to be brought in before the election. It's not on the radar screen. Former Premier Campbell said that after the election was brought in.
Yeah. When you say people, you're referring to the majority of people.
In Vancouver Falls Creek, I believe the numbers were approximately 6,000 people. We needed 10% of registered voters who voted in the last election, so we did manage to get about, I think, 17% or 20% in that particular riding. So I believe that they are ready.
Yeah, some politicians think that the majority of people could be wrong, and therefore the wise politician should help them make a decision because the majority of people don't know what's good for them.
But that is also where I believe that BC First is trying to build a coalition of MLAs that is directly responsible to their constituents. Second part is that we're building a consultative, collaborative, and consensus-based approach on issues. Mm-hmm. We also believe in a partnership with the people. That in and of itself will inform, and an MLA, that's part of his job. That's what taxpayers pay him to do, is to go around in his community and gather the pulse on issues.
Here we are with Regan Henson, candidate for the Green Party and Vancouver Langara.
Yes.
Right? Good. So you have agreed to come and discuss or talk a little bit about democracy.
Yeah.
And the question that comes to mind is, do you think that people, your constituents, people that are going to vote for you, are ready to make their own decisions, are ready to participate in the political decision making?
Well, I certainly think that there is great potential for every citizen to be able to engage in the democratic system. However, as it stands right now, that is not happening. The majority of people are not really engaged in politics at all. I mean, in my riding, Vancouver Langara, we have our political engagement is at an all-time low. In the most recent BC election, we had voter turnout of about 47%, and it's the lowest in history for that area. So, you know, are people ready to make decisions? I think not quite. I think there needs to be a lot that needs to be done before that can happen.
What needs to be done?
Well, first of all, we need to fix this issue of political disengagement. As I said, the vast majority of people in my riding didn't vote in the last election. And why is that?
Yeah.
Well, the vast majority of them didn't want to support either of the two traditional parties. And because the two traditional parties haven't been able to provide politics in a way that is engaging, and quite frankly, they have made it quite negative for most people. And so citizens in my riding have simply been turned off by politics. You know, I was just in my neighborhood the other day, and I was just talking to people on the street about, you know, if they've heard about the BC election next month. And so I was surprised that so many of them told me, oh, don't even get me started. Don't even talk to me about the election, because they didn't want to.
They want to participate.
No.
So you're saying that people are not really ready to participate. But I also hear you saying that they are not ready because the system does not allow them to participate.
Right.
So how would you change that to make more participative so people can come and say, this is what I want?
I think the biggest problem right now is that the two traditional parties and the vast majority of MLAs, they listen more to the big corporations and labor unions who donate to them than they listen to their constituents. And that is why their constituents are not interested in a lot of things that they have to say. And that is why they protest almost to this system by not voting, by not showing up at the polls.
So how do you change that?
So that's why the Green Party, you know, it's been 30 years. The Green Party is 30 years old. So this year it's different. This year the Green Party we are actually becoming of age, and we are no longer seen as a marginalized party, and we actually have the most comprehensive platform. And the Green Party is really striving for participatory democracy, to restoring that participation in democracy. And the way to do that is through democratic reform, is through reform of our electoral system, give people proportional representation so that when people go to the polls, they actually have a feeling that this vote is actually going to be counted for something, is actually meaningful.
Yeah, proportional representation supports the party, not necessarily an issue. So if we say, should we have a bridge here between North Vancouver and Falls Creek? Okay, and there's a debate and people are going to discuss that. Proportional representation doesn't apply to it. What counts is direct count of the opinions of your constituents, whether they are green or red or orange. It doesn't really matter. What we want to know in direct democracy is what each individual think, not which political party they support, because proportional representation actually focuses on parties, supporting a party.
Well, yes, exactly. The Green Party is actually not a political party in the traditional sense, because the Green Party is actually a group of independents. We don't have anything like the party whip that the major parties have. Our leader, Jane Sturck, even though she is our leader, she would never tell, if we are elected, she would never tell MLAs of the Green Party to vote yes on this legislation and vote no on the other one. She will not do that because she is a spokesperson for our group, but she is not necessarily going to dictate how elected officials vote. So in my view, what is an MLA really? It is nothing more than a spokesperson for the constituents. So in that sense, the MLA should really have no special interests. And that is why people have been, you know, take your example of let's build a bridge or build something. If there is a great debate, the debate itself is not taken into consideration when the decision is made. And why? Because the debate is between people in the community, but the government is not part of the community, because the government stands more for the people who donated to their campaigns. For example, the big corporations and big labor unions. They have a lot more leverage than the people who are actually participating in that debate, the people who actually are engaging in a dialogue.
Shane, you realize that the more people get the right to make decisions, the less power you have as an elected MLA, because right now you have all the power to make the decisions on behalf of all your constituents. If there is more referendums, then you lose some power.
Sure.
Are you ready to give some of that power to the people?
Yeah, and I don't think that and I think that for many politicians, they are not unhappy about that decision at all. I mean, I look at the one referendum that we had in British Columbia on the HST, which was a citizen-driven initiative, remarkably successful, more successful than I ever thought it would be, to get to referendum and then to in fact be successful at what's a pretty high threshold to be successful. And that worked. And I'll tell you, for a lot of politicians, that was kind of a bit of a relief, because they didn't have to make the decision anymore, because the decision was made for them. So I don't think politicians worry about giving that up so much. Cabinets might, governments might, individual MLAs not so much.
Okay, so you're not worried about losing some power or giving up some power on behalf of the people?
Ultimately, the power you get from the people who put you in place. I don't have any power except from the people who put me in place, and they always, at the end of the day, get to decide if they want to take it back.
All right.
You know, personally, I was really hoping that the STV in BC, for instance, would get more traction than it did the last time around. You know, a lot of people spent a lot of time working on a system that they felt would have been better.
How would have STB help people, say, recall an MLA or bring a referendum?
Well, I don't think STV would have done that, but it may have made the decision making in the legislature a little bit different, because there would have been probably a bigger mix, or a better, I wouldn't say better, I'd say a different mix of political stripes that would have ended up in the seats.
So if different politicians get elected, then that would represent better the will of the people?
I think so. You know, my own sense is that it would. I don't think that having a coalition is as bad as some people believe it is. You know, I realize that it's a lot easier to get legislation through sometimes when there is a dominant party in place, but that's not necessarily always a good thing. For instance, the BC Liberals, I think, took it for granted last time around that they had social license to go ahead and ram through HST when quite clearly they didn't. Whether or not HST was actually a good thing or not is another question, but there's no question they didn't have the right to do it.
So I hear you first that you don't think the people are ready for referendum and recall.
In all cases, okay? There are some cases where I think a referendum is very appropriate. If we are going to change a fundamental way that democracy works, for instance, federally we had a referendum on the Charlottetown Accord about 20 years ago. That's a situation where a referendum is warranted.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so who would decide when a referendum is warranted and when it's not? I mean, when I go and vote for you, I don't get asked whether my vote for you is warranted or not. I do it because my own gut feeling or whatever I understand from you. When I want to change in the recall, I want to change my vote from you to somebody else. Now I need somebody to decide whether it's warranted or not.
Yeah. You know, to be honest with you, I don't have the answer to that. I'd like to give you the answer. I've sat here and thought about this before coming here, and I haven't quite made up my mind about it. I don't have the framework to give you what the thought process would be on it right now, but I am in favor of participatory democracy to a certain degree, but I still believe that the system we have, where we elect people to go and make, you know, think through complex decisions on our behalf, I think that works.
There are many reasons and excuses to dismiss the need for shifting from representative democracy to direct democracy. But when a significant number of us, the citizens, realize the need and the possibility of changing the political system, we will start legislating our own shadow constitution. How do we do that? One possibility is suggested on this little booklet, Perpetual Direct Democracy, published by Amazon.com, but you can also read it for free online on our website, pacific.ca. On the next segment of this program, we ask political candidates how can they verify, quantify, tabulate public approval on a new or old legislation. And finally, whether they would enhance and perpetually use the 1996 recall and initiative legislation.